Boom. We're live, guys. Roger, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
Good to have you again.
Yeah.
Joshy,
Mikey,
good to see you.
good to see you. Where are you operating from today, Mike?
Well, for today and for a short time to come, I'm in Richmond, Virginia. But as you know, we just put down a contract. My wife and I just put down a contract on a new home in Delray Beach, Florida. So we're joining the mass migration, and we'll be in Florida by June.
That's
awesome. As our daughter graduates from school. Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. I thought you were going to save that for your win, but you're right out of the gate with it.
Oh, I'm coming out fast today. I'm ready to roll, man.
Amen.
That migration to Florida, especially coming from the north, is going to continue as well and accelerate.
I'm hoping that's favorable for home prices. We were down there, and realtors, we have several realtors tell us that they are literally selling inventory as fast as it comes on the market, and they're doing FaceTime walkthroughs with buyers who are closing on the spot. Say, "I'll take it." They do a FaceTime walkthrough. Yep, I'll take it. There are thousands of people a day moving. That's pretty incredible. So yeah.
Pretty soon you're going to have my background.
I am.
But yours is going to be real.
It's going to be real. I'm going to be there surfing like a mile from my house. There'll be able to go surf during my lunch break. It's great.
Low taxes, nice weather, Second Amendment rights.
There you go. State exactly. And so zero state taxes. So anyway, so cool. Well, come on in, guys. We're happy to have you. Who do we look at all these people coming in? They're piling in. Billy Nickel from Tennessee, also a no tax state. Billy, Brenda Caruso, Chandra, Paul Zaffarana. Is Gay back? Gay Barton? She hasn't missed a show yet. So Tammy, Rick, hey guys, come on in, everybody. Grab a seat up front. We've got an exciting show today. Let's 3 after, Josh. So we got a lot to cover. So let's roll, shall we?
We're gonna dive in already. You want
let's
to
dive in. No, man. Let's dive in. It's 3 after. Let's get started.
Okay.
So look, on behalf of my partner Josh Fry, myself, and Michael Mahoney, welcome to Distributors Helping Distributors. Today's topic is insights and predictions for the 2021 economy, featuring economist and futurist Roger Arnold. Today we have a change in administration. We're going into the 10th month of this pandemic, which, if you remember back when we first talked about this, was supposed to be a 15-day thing. So now we're to 10 months. We've got promises of mandatory mask mandates and a lot more coming. It's an interesting time. So we felt that this would be a timely show to talk about how this might affect our industry and promotional products business, and to get ready. So we encourage Q&A. So down at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see a Q&A button. Give us your question. Give Roger your questions. He is the guy to go to for answers, and also celebrate the wins. So we love to keep it positive, the positive energy. Please come in and put in, just celebrate your wins since the last show, and give us the good news. And anyone who can see that, you guys can go into the Q&A and you can actually look and see some of these wins yourself. We've got a lot of new people. Josh, we hit 850 registrations for this show.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really exciting. We started this back in, what's our first show? March?
Yeah, end of March.
So it was first show. And look, guys, for those of you who are new, Josh and I are with the Swag Coach. We're frontline promotional products distributors just like you. In addition, we offer a program called Small Group Coaching. It's for elite promotional products distributors. That program helps you to open doors, close deals, and scale your business profitably. And we're going to talk about that program just very briefly. If you're interested, at the end of the show, we're going to offer a 30-minute one-on-one coaching session for 5 people who respond. We've done that the past couple of shows. It's been a lot of fun. We'll come in and talk about your business and give you some ideas. It's a great opportunity. Today's guest, and we're going to come back to him in a minute, but today's guest is a renowned futurist, investment advisor, is a wealth manager who was a guest on this show May 13th. It was one of our highest rated shows. And in a few minutes, I like to revisit some of Roger's prognostications. And I'm telling you, prepare to be amazed. The replay of that show is worth watching. I watched it myself in preparation for today's show. And believe me, that show is worth rewatching. It remains eerily and I'd say surprisingly relevant 8 months later. So I'm really excited to have Roger on today. A disclaimer as we start, we're not giving legal, business, or financial advice. In fact, I strongly discourage you taking any such advice from us, especially from Josh. And before making any investment or business decisions, consult your own advisors who have really big liability policies. So
You are rolling today.
I am.
Can I get a word in?
Hang on, Josh. Okay. Josh, why don't you celebrate the wins, Josh?
Thank you.
You got 15 seconds.
Okay. I got 100%, what's it called, with my PPP loan.
You got it forgiven. Good for you.
Forgiveness. So
all right.
I'm really happy about that. It really obviously helps us small business owners and promotional product distributors, all of whom, don't take my advice, check with your banker, are eligible for your PPP. And we're actually going to talk a little bit about that in our next show, that new stimulus package and what that means for us. So we got a lot of exciting, great things that are happening for us in our industry. I'm excited. Just wanted to say again, welcome, Roger. Excited to have you back. Like Mike, I was listening to the previous webinar and some of the points you brought up, and boy, were you spot on. And it's just great to go for round two here. The spirit of this webinar is to bring like-minded professional promo sales reps and distributors together and share some best practices, help each other stay positive and navigate through not just this pandemic, but obviously what's going on in the world. There's so much changes that are happening as of today, and just to kind of get a sneak peek insight, what it's going to look like for us and how it's going to affect our businesses and our industry is going to be awesome. So we're excited to be doing this one. And thanks again, Roger, for joining us.
Sure.
So, all right. Should we do a poll, Josh?
Absolutely.
Actually,
let's just dig in.
Let's dig right in. So, all right. So we've got 3 polls today, guys. So here's the first one. Let's get a sense of the room here. How does the new administration, presidential administration, obviously influence your outlook on the economy? More optimistic about the economy, less optimistic, or doesn't matter to you? No change at all. So tell us what you think. And in a few minutes, we'll tell you if you're right or wrong, because Roger's going to tell us the truth. So, no, but this will be interesting to see. So, okay, I'm going to close this because we've got 3 and I want to move quickly. So,
I see.
We got to go, Josh. We have to move.
Yeah.
You're on beach. You're on island time down there, but the rest of it, we got to move forward. So look, here we go. So I'll just read these out. So no change, 14%, more optimistic, 30%, less optimistic about the outlook on the economy, 56%. So 56% are saying that they think essentially things are going to get worse economically. So interesting. Okay. Here we go. Next poll. Which of the following best describes your view of the government influence on your business? So government leadership doesn't affect my plans. I'm going to do whatever it takes to succeed. Or government leadership has a significant impact on my ability to succeed. This is really a question about your attitudes. Obviously, the government has a great influence on business environment. That's not the question. The question is what's your attitude towards it. It's like, look, I'm a little bit helpless. Do this, I've got to react, or I'll just do whatever it takes. And I'm going to win no matter what, right?
Yeah, these are really good questions, Mike.
You like how I framed these up, Josh? So,
hell of a job.
Thank you. All right. Okay, I'm going to close this one out. So here we go. We've got, wow, I like this. We've got some go-getters. These are entrepreneurs, Josh, Roger. We've got, 81% said, I'll do whatever it takes to succeed. So these are entrepreneurs. I like this. All right. And then the last one, because we're going to talk a bit about markets today. The ASI came out with an article here in the past couple of weeks about what they think will be the top industries for promotional products buyers as promotional products buyers in 2021. Question is, which do you serve? You could choose more than one answer. Roger, you might take a look at this if you see the screen here, and
Yeah.
maybe in a few minutes we'll get your feedback. Josh and I were a little skeptical. I don't know where they got this list, but skeptical on some of these.
And a shout out to Brian, the promo hunter, for sharing the list with us. We appreciate that.
Oh, thanks, Brian.
Small group coaching member.
There you go. Put in that shameless plug, Josh. Okay. All right. I'm gonna move forward here and close this out, and we're gonna bring a Russ. All right, let me close this out. We'll end the polling, and interesting. Now these don't add up to 100%, right? So out of the people who responded to this, 66% of the people who responded said they service healthcare. I'll pick some of the top ones. 42% said event planners and trade show organizers. What do we have all that? Below that, education, school, and spirit was top. Nonprofits is top. So those are all, popular, right? These are ones that we're servicing. A lot of people are servicing. So, okay. All right. Thanks, guys. This is really good feedback for us to work on. So let's talk about Roger. And I want to revisit, just before we introduce you, Roger, and bring you on, I want to talk about the last show. Josh, could you put up that slide that we have of Roger's slide here?
I can. Let me see if
you
it
remember how to
see if it works. Did it work?
Yeah. Oh, there you go, Roger. That's you. So this is Roger the Magnificent, and now we have the great seer, soothsayer, and sage, Roger the Magnificent. In my hand, Roger, I hold the envelopes. As a child of 4 can plainly see, these envelopes have been hermetically sealed. They've been kept in a mayonnaise jar on Funkin' Wagnall's porch since noon today. No one knows the contents of these envelopes but you, Roger. In your mystical and borderline divine way, you will ascertain the answers, having never before heard the questions.
All righty.
My God, you're a pro. That's awesome.
That was my best Ed McMahon impersonation, guys.
That was amazing.
Thank you. So Roger was with us May 13th. So guys, remember, this kind of really got roaring, March, it's only 6 weeks into it, maybe, or less, right? So at the time, candidly, I thought Roger was being overly dramatic, pessimistic. I kind of discounted some of what he said. I was like, come on. I tell you, I was completely wrong. I went back and watched that show again. I was wrong. Roger was 100% right. And that's why nobody calls me to go on their show, give my opinion or projections. So some of the things Roger said, this will be a light pandemic, almost a non-event. The future is going to be looked back more like a really bad flu. You could argue the numbers, but I think that by and large, that's proven very true. He said we will develop vaccines, something we'd never done before. So we're going to develop vaccines. We're going to move past this. I asked about the shape of the recovery. He said the shape of the recovery is not the thing to be looking at. The biggest impact will not be economic. It will be the psychological impact done to people as a result of the political system. He said the Trump administration lost control of the narrative, and it's now controlled. The narrative is controlled by the healthcare system, including Birch and Fauci. And that proved, I think, objectively quite true. He said, we will not be going back to the old normal. This is where I totally just wasn't buying in at the time. He said, we're not going back to the old normal. Social distancing rules, PPE rules are the baseline minimum. Get it out of your head that we're going back to normal. This is long-term. It won't be temporary. It's probably generational. It's an existential threat to many industries, health clubs, so forth. He said to survive, they're going to have to use PPE and train their staff like medical professionals. And our job is not just to say, hey, I've got PPE available to sell, but rather here's how you use it. So we have to educate ourselves so that we can effectively sell it. He also talked about Congress needed to pass a law to make it illegal to sue somebody for contracting the virus, like a business or restaurant, but he said they probably won't be able to get that done until after the election, which so far is true. And the government laws are reactive, not proactive. You don't need to they don't want to save the day until it needs to be saved. He said the top-down, I'm almost done here, top-down stimulus, which we were trying at the time, wouldn't work, that we needed to get cash in the hands of consumers, which months later we did. We got these stimulus checks issued. And he said Democrats want to keep the economy closed. Republicans desperately wanted to get it open. You kind of see that in the red states and the blue states. And I've noticed that when I was in Florida the past couple of weeks. It's wide open down there. It's a very different place. And he said that he also said in the presidential election, the wind is behind the back of the Democrats. So you nailed that one too. So anyway, that's some of what you had last time. You talked a lot about China as well. We're going to get back into that. So Roger, welcome back. We're excited to have you. Roger is a former chief economist for ALM Advisors. You're still in, where are you located today, Roger?
I'm in Gaithersburg, Maryland, right outside of DC.
Okay, I want to say, okay, not in California anymore. Okay.
No.
Roger's been on a lot of national shows. He's a sought after public speaker and is very well known nationally. So we're excited to have you back. So Roger, why don't you give us your 10,000 foot view of where we are today? You're talking to a lot of small business owners, a lot of one person business owners who are promotional products distributors. Where do you see things shifting to today?
All right. Just before I get to that,
yeah,
real quickly, just so everybody's aware, I got nothing to sell you. There's no blogging. There's no newsletters. There's no, hey, can you follow me elsewhere? This is it. I have a closed loop business now. I serve my existing clientele. I have known Josh for a long time. I'm not quite sure how long, probably 15 years, Josh, something like that.
15. And by the way, Roger, you're welcome to sell some of our stuff.
Yes. Okay. Well, there's no other business here. I have existing clientele that I've known for many, many years, and I work with them. And basically that's it. If you look for me on the internet, most of what used to be there, my writing and things along those lines, is now gone. I used to write for publications, and I used to have a much higher profile, public profile. My goal now really is zero profile. So except working with my existing clients. Also, with respect to where we're going, I would add this: pessimists always lose. It was interesting in the polls we just took that 56%, I think you said, were pessimistic, but 81% were going to do in it whatever they had to do to succeed. It doesn't quite jive with one another. The future is always optimistic. There's always a way to take advantage of what the situation is. I would assume that the 56% number for people that think the outlook is negative is perhaps driven by politics. It might be driven by the news. I generally tell people, and my clients included, turn off the news. There's no news in the news. If it's on the news, it's not news. You are being programmed. Leave it alone. You can ascertain what future projections or trajectories are based on mathematical models. I think we discussed some of that last time. I can discuss some of it this time as well. And that's what I do. There's a whole lecture series I have known on what's known as the global meta-narrative, which explains that, which is the intersection of energy, technology, debt, and demographics. It's a worldwide phenomenon. It's a humanity issue that shows where we are all headed collectively, not just in the United States, not just in China, things along those lines. We are all facing this same exact trajectory. If you don't understand it, it does look scary. It can be pessimistic. It can look negative. If you do understand it, you understand that it's about humanity itself continuing to evolve, in our institutions and the way we do things are going to have to evolve. For example, and I don't recall whether we talked about this last time, but we are migrating, all of the world is migrating towards the necessity for the economic models and political models we use to have to be altered. We're going to have to adopt a universal basic income. This is not just in the United States, this is everywhere. And math shows that this is going to happen, okay? And that it is a positive. And I can explain that in more detail, perhaps later on in this show, if we have time, but that's a longer term issue. It's not just 2021. As we continue to migrate down this path, though, people that understand it will be very optimistic about it. People that don't understand it will be very pessimistic about it. Just understand that everything that's happening is about the advancement of humanity. That doesn't mean everything's going to be wonderful. There are definitely going to be shocks to the system. There will be civil wars. There may be a civil war in the U.S. We may be in one right now, and it may metastasize much more quickly than we're prepared for. But that will likely be the result of misunderstandings about where we're headed, misunderstandings between political parties, misunderstandings between capital and labor. And we'll just leave that alone. I will add, before getting further into this, that one of the big issues I do right now, even though I'm very optimistic about things, I'm also realistic about some of these issues, and the fact that other people perhaps around us that don't understand issues and what's happening is I teach people how to use guns. I'm a Marine myself, I've used guns my entire life. A lot of people have been coming to me and saying, okay, thanks for that education about the economy. Can you teach me how to use a weapon? What type of weapon I should have for home defense? Should I get a concealed carry permit? A lot of the people on this call qualify for concealed carry. They perhaps don't know it. Concealed carry is designed specifically. Each state is different with the way the laws work, but are really designed for business owners and sales representatives. And people oftentimes say, I don't like guns. I said, look, whether you like them or not, they're becoming necessities. You have a responsibility to take care of yourself and your family. There are easy ways to do it. If you get familiar with a gun for home protection, and everybody, in my opinion, should. I won't get into that in detail here, but I basically teach people what guns to use. I'll just skip to the fact that for home defense, you should be using a bullpup shotgun. Okay.
We're going to focus on putting logos on those, and then some based on our audience and today's show topic.
Well, my takeaway is selling to the gun manufacturing industry. It sounds like that's going to be a growing industry.
It is a growing industry. As a matter of fact, it's been occurring below the surface. The media is not aware of this. If you go to buy a gun, there are more guns were sold in the U.S. last year in 2020 than ever before. The previous record, by the way, was 2016 when we had the fight between Clinton and Trump.
I mean, yeah, look, to bring this back again, yeah, like Josh said, and so this is probably one of the topics here, the takeaways is, which industries, because we promote pursuing a vertical niche, right, for distributors. And if there's one industry that would be good, it would be the gun industry, if you're okay with that. I mean, I know that my 17-year-old daughter, she wants gun training. We went to Cabela's here 3 times, got in line. We had to wait for hours. We couldn't get in. We couldn't get one. It took too long in the line, and we went to the gun range here to sign up. They're booked through March, the end of March, for gun training. It's a big range. So that's a hot industry, whereas a lot are struggling. This is one that you might want to consider putting on your list to sell to. So
yeah. That's right.
Okay.
So, by the way, that's not pessimism. There's nothing pessimistic about that.
Right.
You've got to deal with the situation that's around you, and you've got to deal with what other people's belief systems are. And people are becoming violent, and so you just got to protect yourself. But
we've got one of our distributors here, Chandra's ammunition is up 300+% over a year ago. I can verify that. So yeah, that is true. So okay, well let's move the conversation forward. So Josh, I know you have. How do we want to do this, Josh? Do you have a question for Roger, or?
Well, yeah. So let's. Can you give us the futuristic? What do you see in 2021 as it relates to? Why don't we start off maybe just with the U.S. economy?
Yeah.
And specifically, a lot of us are in business to business sales. What markets do you see like really thriving? Which ones should we be kind of avoiding? Obviously,
let's look at the government response first, and then we can get into the industry stuff. Okay,
let's do it.
First of all, we're leaving one ideology behind, and we are adopting another ideology. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it is really irrelevant. You got to deal with reality here. Okay. For 4 years, we had a president, an executive, and a administration in Washington that was designed around the concept of nationalism. America first, things along those lines. And that was in response to the globalists who had previously been in charge. Well, now we've just ushered the nationalists out, and the globalists are back in. I think we talked a little bit about this last time as well, that when the nationalists are there, you had to be very wary about doing business overseas. Well, the globalists are back in charge. So you're going to start seeing increased likelihood that doing business overseas, again, is going to be easier. That may or may not be positive for the long-term viability of the U.S. economy, but that's the reality that we're in. You're also going to see increased government spending that will be stimulative to the economy in the short term. In 2021, you're going to send the extra $1,400 checks out to most people anyway here shortly. That will have an immediate kind of adrenaline shot to the economy. Will be very positive. The increased government spending overall, and I'll address infrastructure separately, but overall, the increased government spending will have a negative effect on the value of the dollar. That means the dollar will depreciate or go down in value versus other currencies. That will mean that imports to the United States will go up in price. So if you're importing from China or wherever, the cost of the goods you're bringing in is going to be going up. So what we'll see is one of two things happening on the broad basis. I'll get to taxes in a minute as well. And that is we are either going to experience an inflationary cycle, which would be very positive. I don't think it's likely, but it would be very positive. An inflationary cycle is when you have an increase in net economic activity and an increase in prices as a result, which means bank lending goes up, the increase in money supply goes up, and the cost of goods go up. And the velocity of money moving through the economy also increases. That's kind of a virtuous cycle where everything positive happens. What I think is more likely to happen is a stagflationary environment. In a stagflationary environment, and the last time we experienced this was in the 1970s as a result of a monetary policy failure, and I'll talk about that as well, is when you have an increase in the cost of goods being coupled with a decrease in real economic activity, or where the increase in the cost of goods is faster than the increase in economic activity, okay? And job creation and bank lending and things along those lines. And the Fed is going to have to deal with this, okay? And I think that in the immediate, they may confuse the increase in the cost of goods being driven by the dollar depreciation being caused by the government spending going up as an inflationary signal, and then trying to offset that by pushing short-term interest rates higher. If they push short-term interest rates higher, and in a stagflationary environment, what will happen is long-term interest rates will go down even further. In other words, mortgage rates will go down rather than up, and that will be very stimulative for the housing environment, okay? But the Fed is going to have to deal with these things, and by and large, people have this belief system. The Federal Reserve, our monetary authority, are like really smart people and really know what they're doing. And I don't mean to say that that's not the case, but the way the economy operates is really not the way the Fed believes that it does operate. For example, okay, and the Fed makes mistakes on a regular basis. It's like OJT for them. All the environments we deal with, it's like on-the-job training. They realize after they made a mistake, okay, we did something wrong, let's reverse it. The stagflation that we experienced in the 1970s, I'm not going to get into this in full detail because we're trying to focus just on 2021, but because we're probably going to be facing a stagflationary environment, I think it's important to understand what happened the last time we went through it. In the 1970s, the belief system by the Federal Reserve collectively and by economists and economics in general was that if you pushed short-term interest rates up, it would cause long-term interest rates to go even higher, faster, okay? So as prices started rising in the 1970s, because of the ending of the Bretton Woods Accord. The Bretton Woods Accord was the agreement that was put together at the end of World War II that said all the gold in the world basically was collected into the United States from everywhere. Private ownership was canceled out. The dollar was attached to gold, and then everything else was priced against the dollar, okay? Leading up into the early 1970s, the Germans and some of the European countries started complaining that the dollar was being depreciated because we were spending it faster than we were collecting gold. Johnson trying to stimulate the economy through a bunch of domestic programs. At the same time, he was fighting the Vietnamese War. trust in the dollar was broken down. As a result, Nixon was elected, and he chose to take us off the gold standard, went to a fiat currency system. The dollar was no longer attached to gold. As a result, what happened was the dollar began falling in value. The Federal Reserve, however, as the dollar went down in value, prices started going up, still believed back then that if they pushed short-term interest rates up, it was going to cause long-term interest rates to go up even faster. Okay, so they didn't raise short-term interest rates, and of course, what that did was it made short-term lending rates very low, stimulated a lot of bank lending, causing activity to increase, and the asset prices started going up. And so the Federal Reserve was saying they didn't really know what to do. They just kept holding interest rates down on the short end, until finally Paul Volcker came in 1980, and after the fact said, well, holding short-term interest rates down didn't work, so maybe we should force short-term interest rates up. And he did very rapidly. Bank lending stopped. We went into a recession very quickly, and long-term interest rates began falling, and they have been falling ever since. That's how the Federal Reserve learned, okay, basically the differences between a short-term and long-term interest rates is what's known as cyclically inverse. So what we have now is the Fed learning, as a result of making mistakes, that if you push short-term interest rates up, bank lending decreases, inflation rates come down, and long-term interest rates as a result fall. Okay, so when they need to stimulate, they lower short-term interest rates, bank activity goes up, economic activity increases, and expectations for inflation go up, and long-term interest rates rise. So they move in the opposite direction. All right, very important to understand that. People think that that's like an economic rule. They don't realize that we learned this by doing the opposite and having it not work out well in the 1970s. The reason that's important, again, is that the Fed is likely going to be faced with this a similar situation, perhaps as early as this year, as government spending starts going through the roof, the dollar begins to depreciate, the economic activity increase is less than the cost of goods, which again is stagflationary, and we'll have to look at the Federal Reserve and say, okay, did they remember the mistakes they made in the 1970s? And are they, if not, are they going to repeat them? I don't know.
Roger, how much lower can they go? I mean, we've had interest rates, the bank lending rate close to zero for a long time, which I mean, is creating a whole other host of problems. I mean, aren't the Feds? I know we're getting pretty deep into the weeds about the Feds. And I'd like to bring this back home to the audience, but and how this will impact their businesses. But aren't the Fed's options really limited at this point? I mean, the rates are pretty low.
Everybody thinks once you go to zero, there's nothing else the Fed can do. But there's literally all kinds of things. There's this concept of helicopter money. The Federal Reserve can do, and let's not get into it now, but the Fed can literally do an enormous number of things which they have not yet done. The Fed, for example, if they wanted to, could start lending money directly to people, not just to the top tier banks. And by the way, the Fed only lends money to about a third of the banks. It's those banks that turn around and then lend money from the Fed to the smaller banks. Okay, but let's not get into that thing. The important, and we probably did go too far into that, but the importance of this issue right now is we are likely going to be facing, in my opinion, the prospects for stagflation are greater than for inflation in 2021. Okay, but we are definitely going to get an increase in government spending that will have an initial very positive impact on the economy. Okay, it will be spent money. So there's not going to be a multiplier effect that will be driven by it, unless they move into an infrastructure program. I think no matter what business you're in, you need to be watchful to see if they're going to do an infrastructure program. This is very important for the economy.
Why?
Trump and Clinton both promised it. It never got delivered. And that was one of the biggest mistakes that Trump made. That likely is what cost him his presidency, this last election, by the way. But infrastructure program, for some reason, this doesn't set in with people. I don't understand why. Infrastructure is the one area and only area where federal spending can have a positive impact or could cause a positive fiscal multiplier, which means have a very positive impact on the economy. For some reason, though, we don't do it. We do other things which don't have a positive fiscal multiplier. They just cause the national debt to rise. I don't understand why they both promised it and neither one, or well, Clinton couldn't, but Trump didn't then deliver, other than the fact that Trump became convinced that all I have to do is cut taxes. And if I do that, that will stimulate the economy and job production as a result, job creation as a result. He was wrong. The reason he was wrong about that was that we have a fractured relationship between capital and labor. And this is important to understand as well. And that is that, and this gets to that global meta-narrative issue I was talking about. Right now, labor is being displaced by technology. Okay, that trend is going to continue. So the traditional relationship between capital or money, people that have money, and labor, the people that supply the effort to make things work, is traditionally the fulcrum between them is what is government policy, whether it's fiscal policy, tax policy, monetary policy, regulations, things along those lines. Are we going to have an open border policy, globalism, or are we going to have closed border nationalism, those sorts of things, okay? And what we try to do is maintain a working relationship between capital and labor. Mm-hmm. Well, that's broken now because technology, no matter what government does, technology is now displacing labor, okay? And that trend is only going to accelerate from here too. So I think that's very important to understand. But
so but I have a question on that, because so we deal with a lot of manufacturers in our industry, mm-hmm. or quasi manufacturers. Even if they're importing product, there's a lot of labor involved with decorating the products and then the logistics and all that. So what does that mean for us? I mean, if technology is going to replace the labor, won't that make shouldn't that make our pricing cheaper?
Yes, it will.
And will it? So if we're offset, if the dollar's worth less and we're going to pay more for imports from China, for example, which is a huge part of our supply chain, will those additional costs be offset by the technology replacing the labor, and then will it net out? So will our prices still go up from our supply chain? Well,
there's no absolute in how that's all going to play out, because all of this stuff doesn't happen mechanically. There's an elasticity to it, or a kind of remember how Slinky works? One end moves and the other end moves. And that's kind of the way these things work with each other. Okay.
Remember the theme song?
What's that?
Do you remember the theme song? Sorry, I'm getting off track.
No, I remember.
Slinky.
I remember the commercial. Sorry. That's the way it works. Okay. And the point is, though, that's a longer term trend, technology displacing labor. But it's the reason it's important to understand is not only that it's going to have an impact on the economy, but that's what's playing out when we see the Antifa BLM riots from last year. That's labor saying, no matter what we do, we can't pay our bills. Okay. Same thing plays into the January 6th riots in the Capitol. These things are not going to go away, by the way. The pandemic is not going to go away. The PPE is not going to go away.
This is a great opportunity to focus on. Let's talk about some of these positive things that are going to be that we can benefit from on the promotional, product side of the house. In terms of selling PPE, you said it's not going to go away. You had said in the last show we did, this is a permanent new normal.
Yeah.
What is it? Yeah. Maybe for those that don't remember the last one, or just you could talk a little bit about that with PPE and some of these new standards, because that directly ties in with how we can go to market and be selling right now, and what types of businesses, where these are becoming standards that are going to survive, I guess, in restaurants.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to why it's a new permanent, regardless of what governments do. Listen, even if the government came out today and just hypothetically, Biden gets inaugurated and comes out and says, look, there really wasn't a pandemic. It's not a big deal. We're doing away with the requirement for masks. Everybody's going to get a vaccine within the next 30 days. It's all going to be behind us. Everybody go back to work and just live your life, and it's going to be wonderful. Okay. Even if the government came out and said that, as I think we talked about last time, the psychology of people is not going to accept it. Insurance companies are not going to accept it of businesses. And I think we talked about this last time as well. This is a part of the new normal. There's an entire new social structure around this. That social structure is forcing legal structures. Legal structures are forcing financial infrastructure changes, the way insurance companies work with businesses. This has all been changed by the way this pandemic is put together, and new systems have been adopted that aren't going to go away even if the vaccine works.
So even if the government policy shifts and changes, said, okay, it's over, let's go back to normal, society won't do that for all the reasons you stated. There's psychological reasons and others. We're going to be in this for a while.
Yeah. And by the way, there are plenty of situations that are analogous to this that don't require pandemics, where if there's an argument between two people or a standoff between governments, for example, and what will happen while they are debating or fighting about a trade change or something along those lines is that one party will figure out a workaround for it. So that if the other party comes back and says, wait a second, let's go back to the way things used to be, they're going to say, never mind, we have a new way of doing things now. When you have a heart attack, for example, and this is analogous to it as well, your heart will literally, the human heart will literally start creating new methods for pumping blood, for not pumping, but for delivering blood. If there are clogged arteries, new arteries will simply start growing automatically. This is something a lot of people understand as well. So at any rate, this pandemic came along. It was a light pandemic. We responded to it like it was going to be a big pandemic. When at first we didn't respond to it at all. We screwed this whole thing up. Our political response, our healthcare response, everything became a mess. But we have developed over the course of the past year, by necessity now, all of us collectively participating in this, new ways of doing things. And as a result, those new ways are the ways we are going to deal with it. Even if the gyms open up, and I know some of the gyms have opened up, but let's say they start opening up, the steam rooms and the saunas again. They're going to have new systems there that will be permanent that say only 2 people in a sauna at once or things along those lines. And they will have to do that because the people insuring their business are going to require them to do it because they have this in their new insurance policies. You follow me?
Yeah.
So this whole thing is just going to continue. This is, again, what I think we talked about last time. There was a discussion about whether people should get involved in PPE because they might jump into it just as this whole thing was going away. And I told you last time, it ain't going away.
Yeah. And along those lines, it's just worth pointing out, we polled this audience before, the people that pivoted, that jumped into PPE, had record years, and so this is an opportunity for us in our industry. We're in a fortunate position because our supply chains have shifted. We have, resources to be as competitive as the next person out there. So this is a big opportunity, I think, as it continues into 2021 and beyond.
There's still huge opportunity in the PPE business. As a matter of fact, as far as it's come in the course of the past year or so, it is still operating, the manufacturers in it, the designers in it, et cetera, on the assumption that it will be a short-lived phenomenon. It's not. Again, I think we talked about this last time. This will be a generational, perhaps multi-generational type of shift. PPE is still very uncomfortable. Even the best PPE masks that are out there are not designed to be worn perpetually. So we still have to create this stuff. This stuff all has to be created. It's not going away. And again, I think we talked about that last time. So, if you're thinking it's over because we're all going to get vaccines now, no. And from a political standpoint, I want to add this, and this isn't being cynical. There's, especially on the left in this country, political left in this country. And I'm not saying this because I'm on the political right or anything like that. I'm a mathematician. Numbers teach you everything. Politics teaches you nothing. All right. But on the political left, and Rahm Emanuel in Chicago really expressed this the best when, don't let a crisis go to waste. This is a crisis. The left loves a crisis. They used this crisis to change election laws illegally last year. That happened. That's not because Donald Trump said it happened. It happened. Okay. And as a result, they were able to impact this election. And as a result, perhaps along with Trump's mistakes was enough to shift who was going to be in charge of the executive, perhaps even who's going to be in charge of the Senate, things along those lines. So they love what this crisis has delivered to them, and they're not going to let it go just because they're now in charge. That would be nonsensical to expect that they're going to let it go.
So let me ask you this. Two things. Mike, if you can cut me off if I'm dominating too much. I know you're
doing great.
Okay, thank you, sweetheart. First thing, if how long do you think PPE will last in terms of? I know it's the new normal. You know, I remember having a conversation with a contact of mine who said that his wife is from Japan. It's like 20% of the population wears masks and use PPE. And so is this something, this permanent thing? Is this a 5-year thing, a 10-year thing, a in perpetuity thing? I'm just curious what you think. And then my second follow-up would be based on, the left leveraging the crisis or the fact that PPE is in play. What are the markets that you see that are going to thrive from that maybe we on our side could sell into?
Well, the term I like to use best to describe is multi-generational, or just call it generational. And a generation is roughly 20 years. Okay. If you go back to the 1930s, the people who experienced the stock market around 1929, basically for the rest of their lives, never trusted the stock market again. Okay. And the stock market paid a price for that for at least the next 30 years. A mistrust, a distrust. Now, that doesn't mean that the younger generations weren't participating, but until the younger generations become the dominant generation, the things that they won't be able to have the impact, economic impact and financial market impact, to displace the previous mindset. Okay, so shocks to societies can cause things that will last longer than a presidential cycle or things along those lines. Will last for their entire lives. People that went through this situation, all of us collectively, I'm talking about the whole social construct here, that are especially in their most the portions of their years where they're most economically important. 25 to 54 is what that is. Ages 25 to 54, which is probably most of the people on this call, will have this impact their decision making and the way they live their lives for likely the rest of their lives. Okay. Now the shift that we're talking about here is, even if the government goes away, even if government mandates go away, they say, listen, the government no longer has to be involved in mandating masks and things along those lines. We're beyond that now. They can stop that immediately. It doesn't matter. The social structure is now that masks are required. And that social structure, in other words, let's say the public sector moves away from it. The private sector has displaced the government already. Okay. And this is what I mean by companies for legal liability purposes or even civil liability purposes will have to show that they have pandemic responses. Their insurance companies will mandate that they have these responses. Their people who are their consumers will require these things to be there. So even though it might be an irritant to large portions of the populace, this is something we're simply going to have to live with. And again, the PPE industry is still acting as though this is going to, the vaccine's here, it's going to go away. I'm telling you, it's not going to go away. And that's not just because I said so. There are all kinds of previous analogous situations where you see a shock to a social system being expressed over the next 1 to 2 generations. Okay. So a very short-term shock will have a generational or multi-generational impact. That's where we are. That's simply the way it works. And people have got to get used to it. So even if you haven't participated in this now, I'm telling you, you want to get into PPE, you can still be on the front end of it if you understand that this is something you can build an entire career out of this right now. I think I told that to some of you guys last time we spoke. I think, as a matter of fact, as I recall, you can correct me if I didn't, but I think I told you, you could make an entire career out of just moving into the PPE space and forgetting everything else. That's as much the case now as it was then. Okay?
Fascinating. Yeah, I think it's not to be lost on this conversation, because I know we're talking about some politics or whatever, but the reality is, from the economy and our position and access to the supply chain, we as entrepreneurs, we put your hand up, said, I'm not relying on anybody to make things happen in my business. We've got a lot of things happening that we can take advantage of on the promotional PPE sales side of things. So it's encouraging. It's very encouraging.
And you had in the third question there about the industries that were going to be, that you should be targeting. Listen, even putting the pandemic aside, although that's a biggie, the aging of the population means that a growth industry is still healthcare. Okay, and it's a huge concern for public policy and for the economy overall, because it's already about a fifth to a quarter of the economy overall. But again, because of its size alone and the aging of the population, mandating that it will be a growth industry until the baby boomers are all gone. And believe me, I don't plan on going away anytime in the near future. Although I almost did a couple of years ago when I had a stroke. Yeah, I had a big.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did. And by the way, let me touch on that real quickly. I was 55 years old when I had a stroke. Very young to be having a stroke, and mine was massive, almost checked out, really, really bad. Lost my memory, was paralyzed, the whole bit, man. Everything. We spent about a year in rehab in total. Doctor said, there's nothing wrong with you physically. Everything was absolutely fantastic. You had a stroke because of stress.
Wow. And
they said you need to cut back on the stuff that you're doing. And I said, I'm not going to cut back. This is when I made my decision. Forget the public profile stuff. Fighting with Jim Cramer on TV like we used to do on a regular basis. I said, forget it. I'm not going to half step this thing. I'm going to go away, and I only do business with people I know now and things along those lines. I think that's real important right now, just from the perspective of the fact that people are stressed out everywhere. The media is telling them to be stressed out. Get rid of this stuff. Just focus on your business. Stop watching the news, man. Again, there's no news in the news. You don't want to end up like me, in being stressed out and end up having a stroke as a result of these things happening. So I think just from a personal perspective, the prudent thing to do, again, don't participate. And listen.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Whether you're on the right or the left politically doesn't really matter. Okay, don't be ideologically driven. Politicians never do what they say they're going to do anyway. Watch what they do, not what they say. What they say is meaningless. What they say things to get votes. And then people expect them to do those things they say. I'm like, what do you think? It doesn't make any sense. All right. Just deal with the situation, the cards you're dealt. Whether you wanted Trump to be reelected or not, he's gone. We have Biden. We're going to have a new set of rules. Again, what we were just talking about, government spending is going to go up. That can work in your favor, or you can sit back and say, oh, the government shouldn't be spending money. I don't care whether you think they should or they shouldn't. They're going to do it. All right. So what you have to do is figure out how that's going to impact you.
Right.
Let me ask you this, and then Mike, I know we got to move the conversation forward. Okay. So give us your top industries. What are you said healthcare, any others that you?
Healthcare is number one. You also had in your list there the work from home. Absolutely, work from home. Work from home is going to increase. Work from home is going to require massive amounts and acceleration of investments in technology. Our economy is not set up right now for everyone to be working from home, which means we're going to have to be adopting much better internet connections. So technology overall is going to be a huge, massive growth industry by necessity. The migration away from cities, the migration from the north to the south is going to increase because people that can work from home are going to really want to have a nice environment to work in. This is why the explosion in real estate in Florida is ongoing. It's also, however, why there's an explosion in people moving out of Southern California. It's nice there, but the regulatory environment and the tax environment in California has destroyed it, and that's going to continue. The flight from California the flight from New York, the flight from the cities overall. The people are going to want to have higher quality of life. They have begun to learn what they should have known already, is that they spent most of their free time in their automobiles going back and forth to jobs. They're not going to do that again. They got that free time back. The idea that you're going to stick them back in cars and send them back into cities, no way. And also, on top of that, remember, we just talked about the pandemic, the psychological impact, the collective social impact of this, sending people back into close quarters in cities and telling them they have to use PPE when they do so, and sit at their desk with PPE. It's not going to happen. Just forget it. It's over. All right. This is another one of these generational changes. That is completely over. So I think if you're targeting people as well, you got to not just look at what industries to be involved in. You've also got to look at what geographic areas to be involved in. For example, do you want to be in business in New York City? No. I mean, how would you like to be a landlord in New York City right now? They're all going to go broke. I mean, just forget it. Leave it alone. New York is dead. New York is going to go back and experience the type of financial situation they had in the 1970s. For anybody who wasn't there, it was horrific. Wow. I could tell you stories about, even in the early 80s, driving to New York City, there would be cars on the sides of the streets on fire in the middle of the day. And people, it was just normal. People accepted it. Yeah, that's the way it is. That's what they're going back to. Okay, they are on that trajectory.
Wow.
So if you get away from places like that, as Michael was just talking about, I think before the call or early as the call started, the migration of people into Florida, and there's going to be a migration of people into not just Florida, but into the southern parts of the United States, where the climates are better. So, and it's not, if you're on the West Coast, obviously go look at Arizona versus Southern California. Okay. Not only from the perspective of from a geographic perspective of where the growth is, but from your own personal tax and quality of life and financial perspective overall. Okay.
This has been amazing.
The healthcare industry, the work from home stuff, this is all going to be there. The PPE is going to be there. It's not going away.
Awesome.
This has got a great perspective. We could keep going for another hour, but I mean, look, Roger, I appreciate what you bring to this. You bring a definite opinion on this. And I think, whether people agree or disagree, I think it's helpful to take a stand. So look, this is what I see. This is the math.
Yeah.
I think you haven't shied away at all from how you see the politics, but not from a political perspective, but how you see the math working out, because you've got to factor in how you think the politics is going to impact us. I mean, that's really why we are here. I mean, I think the takeaway, for everyone listening, is to try to take Roger's perspective, blend it with your own and with other things you hear, and use this to figure out how you want to position your business. And Roger's really given us a macro economic, view. He's taking a high level viewpoint, so you can bring this and filter it down to your own business and how it's. But it's certainly a perspective I don't hear, and I haven't heard it in a lot of other places. So I appreciate it. I think you're probably spot on, Roger. So
yeah, and along those lines, just to kind of add to what you're saying, Mike, like, we tend to focus on, okay, what industries, and now you're bringing this whole other element of geographies. I'm like, wow, that's really, really interesting. And it actually there's just so many opportunities out there. The reason I love having you on, and I love this, I mean, I'm a business junkie, but I love kind of what's the future going to look like, and how do we get ahead of it? Because I think to be successful in a business like ours, where it's so competitive with pretty much minimal, if any, barriers to entry, you have to be strategic. You have to be strategic in how you're going to market and where you're going to market and these types of things. So this is
you can sell. I mean, look, most of us are able to sell. Most of the distributors don't sell locally anymore. They sell anywhere. They're selling over the phone, over the internet. So you can. One of the takeaways from Roger today is not only focusing on an industry, but a geography as well. You can have both, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to focus on the construction industry in Florida or in Arizona or in the States, that kind of thing, right?
There's something else in this that's kind of even more broadly speaking, which goes back to the poll you had at the beginning as well. Fear is everywhere. and fear kills. Okay. And fear builds on fear. And fear is looking for people to tell them, don't worry, it's going to be all right. And this is also where the optimism comes in. It will always be all right. There's always going to be some crisis to deal with. But all of your clients are looking for somebody, whether they're staying so or not, for them to say it's going to be all right. And by the way, this is the way you can alleviate your fear. And you don't have to say, don't be afraid. You just have to be confident, optimistic, and show people how they can address the environment that they're facing as well. Whether that's because of their fear of money, fear of the economy, fear of losing their spouse, fear of losing their business. The fear is everywhere today. Acknowledge that and make sure you are not a part of it and that you are taking people's fear away from them. That's the business that you're really in.
And that is actually a perfect segue as we wrap up to talk a little bit about what's coming up and our small group coaching, because one of the things that we do is put peers together and have created a community where we're helping each other, right? We acknowledge what's going on in the world, but we're sharing best business practices, and we're setting up an accountability structure so we can stay focused and strategic in growing our businesses. So we have our we're kind of running past, so I don't know if I'll share my screen or not, but
yeah, why don't you show it, Josh? Because we've got, I think, show your screen and just talk for just a minute about the small group coaching, because one of the things we do is we're bringing home ideas like we've heard from Roger today, and we're bringing that back. Okay, let's drill down. How do we start to apply some of what we've learned from Roger today, right? So let's talk through that, and then I'm going to put up a survey in just a minute for a free 30-minute consultation that we do, one-on-one coaching session.
Yeah, so you go ahead and do that while I'm talking. So basically, our next class starts on February 8th. Our small group coaching is comprised of 2 meetings a month. Excuse me. One is a workshop where we tackle different topics as an entire group, and that could be anything from sales and action planning to, targeting a strategic or a niche market. Then the other part of the meetings, the other side once a month, is accountability group. So you put together a plan. Well, it's about working your plan and being held accountable and to help you stay focused to move the needle forward, overcome your fears, overcome the distractions, and be productive. And that's essentially what our group is about. We currently have what do we have, Mike?
27. Yeah,
we got 27. 27 and continue to grow strong. Every month we're adding new classes. So if you're interested, as Mike said, fill out the poll.
Yeah, so we'll do a one-on-one session. We'll just talk about your business, what you'd like to accomplish over the next 12 months, some of the things that might be holding you back, and some ideas and opportunities and resources to help you overcome that. I think it's a valuable session. So, so for those of you who responded, we'll send out something to you and give you an opportunity to sign up for it. If you decide later you're interested, just email Josh or me at josh@swagcoach.com or michael@swagcoach.com.
Perfect. And then real quickly before we wrap, our next webinar is February 3rd, and we're going to actually be discussing PPP 2.0 and the stimulus package. We've got a Tenley Carp coming in to talk with us about that and answer your questions as it relates to getting your piece of the pie round 2. And then we've got another webinar coming up on February 17th with Joel Goldberg, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Fantastic.
Lots of good stuff, Mike.
Where do you find these guests, Josh? Amazing. A lot of talent. Well, Roger, thanks again. As always, this is really enlightening. It's certainly given me a fresh perspective. I've learned a lot again from you today. So thanks. And I hope you'll agree to come back at some point in the future here, a little bit down the road, talk with us again.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, and would you be okay? I want to again reiterate what Mike says. Thank you for taking the time. So insightful. I mean, I got like 3 pages of notes, and I felt like I was in.
I have plenty more here to talk about.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I know that you're a pretty popular guy. What have you? Would you, if we share is there an email we could share if there are follow-up questions? I know we weren't able to get to everybody's questions today, and I'm sure there are people. So I don't want to invade too much of your time, but if there's a way we can get a few more questions answered from people who have them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just send it to rogerarnold@gmail.com.
That's easy. RogerArnold@gmail.com. For those of you whose questions weren't answered
Yeah.
about specific industries, apologize about that. We got a little caught up in the conversation ourselves. So anyway, well, thank you very much. It was, again, it's super insightful. Uh, don't be surprised if we come calling you again for maybe a round 3. And
It's fine. Happy to do it.
we
All
really
right.
appreciate it. Mike, great job today. Really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen in. I know there's a lot going on in the world. This is going to be an interesting year for us and our businesses, and it's important to, as Roger was saying, look, there's a lot of things going on. We can help one another. We can stay positive, but be resources to each other, and grow our businesses, and try to remain sane and be happy. So anyway, I hope
Bye, guys.
everybody stays healthy, has a great week, and we'll see you soon.
Sell, sell, sell. Go get them, guys.
Thanks
See you next
again.
time.
All right.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Roger. Bye, Josh.
Bye.